They happen to be my views, and well, for the next hour, they're going to be the views of MORLEY Robbins, who is known as the Magnesium Man. And of course, we're going to be talking about the importance of magnesium in your diet. And most people do not understand that certainly probably 70 to 80% of all the adults in America are magnesium deficient. Magnesium is one of those minerals that's vitally important for your health. It has to do with calcium metabolism, and you'll get better calcium metabolism if you have adequate levels of magnesium. And then, of course, we certainly point out that magnesium is important as far as the function of the heart is concerned. It's as important as function as far as your muscles are concerned. It's important as far as certainly your bowels are concerned. The old treatment for constipation used to be milk of magnesia. It has to do with the brain, and certainly when a woman is convulsing during pregnancy, we gave her magnesium sulfate because magnesium sulfate would quiet down the hypermobility or hyperactivity of the brain. And then, of course, it's certainly the magnesium has so many physiological functions, and yet, of course, most people are magnesium deficient. They certainly can't eat enough almonds and nuts to get adequate supplies of magnesium, and that is why it certainly is a justification for taking magnesium on a regular basis. Now, the magnesium we're going to be talking about during this hour is a time-release magnesium. It's called jigsaw magnesium. I should mention that both my son and my wife take this, and they both certainly swear by it. Morley, thank you very much for being with us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself, who you are, and how you got interested in magnesium?
Happy to do that. I affectionately refer to myself as a pre-med retread, and my organic chemistry professor in college, Gordon Galloway, made sure that I was never going to go to medical school. I thanked him many times after that, but I chose that I wanted to be in the field of healthcare, and I was a hospital administrator. I worked in management of hospitals for 12 years, and then was a consultant to hospitals for another 20 years, and then had a run-in with a frozen shoulder. I couldn't pick my hand up above my waist. This occurred about 4 years ago, and it coincided with my doing a forecast of chronic disease in America, and it was projecting out to 2025. And the numbers were so alarming, I realized I couldn't stay on the sidelines, and I went to see a chiropractor of all things. I wasn't open to that until I was confronted by some friends and said, "You need to go see Dr. Liz."
Now, please speak up, Morley, because we need to hear you, and go right ahead.
And she was able to heal my shoulder within a matter of a couple weeks. I had complete rotation, and it just coincided with my need to become a wellness coach, which I have. I've taken certification programs towards that. And about a year and a half ago, I discovered a mineral called magnesium. Was introduced to it by a client, read a book by Carolyn Dean called The Magnesium Miracle, which is a wonderful overview of the subject.
In fact, I would comment that we actually carry that book by Dr. Dean. We have a 4-tape set on magnesium, and of course we have a couple of interviews with her. Well, actually, we're putting together the 4-tape set now. Well, we do carry Carol Dean's certainly a book, and we have the interviews with her. But anyway, go right ahead, Morley. Our guest today is MORLEY Robbins. And, of course, he's referred to as the Magnesium Man. He keeps trying to tell people how vitally important this mineral is. And, of course, jigsaw magnesium is the time-release product we're talking about today. This is Dr. Stan here at Radio Liberty. Our guest this afternoon is MORLEY Robbins, and Morley talks about magnesium and the importance of magnesium. And most people, they don't even think about magnesium. I will tell you, most doctors don't think about magnesium because, of course, everything is done to prevent doctors from really understanding the importance of nutrition. Why? Well, because, as you know, I'm a physician. I graduated from medical school back in 1952. And I've been a physician ever since then. I go to the meetings on a regular basis, and they're dominated by people tied into the pharmaceutical industry, or many of the programs are sponsored by the pharmaceutical industry. They have a tremendous influence as far as medical training, medical schools, medical journals, medical meetings, and they want doctors to prescribe medicines rather than to utilize certainly natural cures for health. And maintaining health involves eating properly and having the proper vitamins and minerals. And one of the most important certainly is magnesium. It's been pretty well depleted from our soil. And so Morley has written and talks extensively about magnesium. Morley, why is magnesium so important for people to have and have adequate levels of it?
The way I characterize it is keying off a famous magnesium researcher, Mildred Seelig. Magnesium is the mineral of motion, and its antagonist, calcium, is the mineral of cement. And it is the orchestra conductor of the cell. It is the leader of the band, and its role inside the cell and throughout the human body is almost overwhelming. It's engaged in thousands and thousands of transactions. It runs about 80% of the body's metabolism, and yet we don't know that. I was completely unaware of it. I took science courses in college and read many books after college, and never was aware of this issue until very recently. And now I feel called to join the chorus of people who are bringing this message to the public that the basis of most chronic disease, if not all chronic disease, things like diabetes, depression, osteoporosis, heart disease, you name the condition that people are suffering with right now, has as its origin magnesium deficiency. And it's because there are different enzymes or different hormones or different chemical transactions that are prevented due to a lack of magnesium.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in just a moment here. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and certainly Morley was just talking about how his interest in magnesium was certainly stimulated by reading a book by Carol Dean. Well, we actually carry that book. We have for a number of years because we think it's vitally important. And we certainly have encouraged people to take certainly magnesium. We have several interviews with Carol Dean. I'm hoping very soon we'll have a 4-tape set on Carol Dean, or 4-CD set on magnesium. It's important that you understand this mineral is absolutely vital for health, and somewhere between 70 or 80% of the public is magnesium deficient. Go right ahead, Morley.
Yeah, and actually, based on my limited experience, you have many decades of working with patients and clients. I'm 4 years into this journey. But I've not met a client yet who wasn't magnesium deficient. But I think you're right. It's probably the accepted number is probably closer to 80%. But the important thing is that people need to understand that this is a mineral that was very naturally occurring in the environment for millions of years, more recently for thousands of years, and then about 100 years ago, it started to disappear from our environment. Started to be refined out of food. When they refine grain, what they're refining off the grain are the minerals, especially magnesium. When they're refining salt, they're refining off the minerals, where they're limiting it to a very finite set of minerals, sodium and chloride, when in fact sea salt has 84 minerals. Sugar has naturally occurring magnesium and potassium in the sugar cane, but when they refine it, it loses that. So this loss of minerals requires, when we eat that kind of food, processed food, it pulls those minerals out of our body in order to metabolize it. Then it's no longer in the water. It used to be naturally occurring in mineral waters. Well, those were shut down in the 1930s. And now the processing of water in cities across the country causes a complete elimination of, a near complete elimination of magnesium. and people just aren't aware of it. And then what the further assault, if I may, is that the use of fluoride now under the guise of dental improvement or dental health, which is a complete myth, by the way. Magnesium is the most alkaline metal on the planet, and they have a magnetic attraction. That's known for to focus on magnesium-rich foods like seafood, nuts and seeds. Kelp is a phenomenal source of magnesium. Leafy greens, which many people are familiar with, the collard greens, mustard greens, beet greens, things of that nature, are very rich sources of magnesium. Grass-fed organ meat, liver, kidney, the heart, are actually very, very rich sources of magnesium. Not a lot of people have the stomach for that now, but unfortunately it's a very rich source. And I think I may have mentioned almonds and cashews and pumpkin seeds, and then everyone's favorite is cocoa. Cocoa powder, over 90% cocoa powder is the second highest source of magnesium on the planet, second only to kelp. So there are sources of food out there, but I think given the degree of deficiency that we're all experiencing, it's also important that people supplement.
And of course, here the Americans don't eat much kelp. Certainly, you go to the Oriental countries, where they eat a lot of kelp, but certainly this is not a standard of a diet, a part of our diet here. Well, if you have a question or comment for our guest, Morley Robbins, our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. That's 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. And the book, certainly, on magnesium by Carol Dean, we certainly, as I say, we've carried it for many years. We've certainly, because we thought it was important, even before the people who manufactured Jigsaw Magnesium contacted us and wanted to advertise with us. Now, Jigsaw Magnesium is a time-release magnesium. Why is that important, Morley? Why is a time-release product important?
It just enables it to be accessed throughout the day. We have an ongoing demand for magnesium. There are 100 trillion cells in our body. Every one of them has a little energy plant called mitochondria, and they are using a source of fuel called ATP all day long, and they cannot do that work without magnesium. And so just the movement of walking, even the cerebral work of thinking or memory requires magnesium. So everything we do during the course of the day does, in fact, expend magnesium. And that particular product, which I think the world of, enables people to have access to it throughout the course of the day, and then, of course, also through the night. There are many products out there. My partner, Dr. Lou Zirkenswick, and I work with 20 different forms of magnesium, but we found the Jigsaw product to be one of the most available and successful with the largest percentage of our clients.
Well, I was curious, is that because it's a time-release magnesium? Well, our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. And we have Mark calling from upstate New York. Hi, Mark. How are we doing?
Dr. Stan, nice to talk to you again. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Now, basically, you're listening on shortwave. So whereabouts in New York do you actually live?
About 26 miles north of the curve of 42nd Street, Grand Central Terminal.
Okay, fine. So you're in the city of New York. That's great. Okay, fine. Well, do you have a question or comment for our guest?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Sir, I'm a former powerlifter, and I had a surgical repair of a tendon in one of my arms. Would magnesium assist in the recuperative process, repair the damaged tissue in any way at all? I'm just curious if that's possible.
Okay, the question then basically is, does magnesium play a part, really, in this case would be in collagen and in helping to repair collagen after it's been damaged? What are your thoughts on that, Morley?
Well, on a couple different levels, I would say yes. Anytime you are anytime the body needs to build protein, it needs magnesium in order to do that. And so the process of building collagen is going to be very protein dependent. You've been through a surgery, there's a recovery period, there's inflammation in that particular joint or wherever you had the surgery. And a research team in 1992 at George Washington University identified that magnesium deficiency was the very mechanism that started inflammation in the body. And then just today, a research team at Case Western Reserve University reaffirmed that study, but did it in a different application in obstetrics. But what it did was it really solidified how important magnesium is in the inflammatory process. And so for you, I think you would really benefit on several different levels. And it's also just going to, one of the most important things that magnesium does is it stabilizes the axon, which is the nerve cell, and it will calm your body down, and it will allow the healing process to occur. The process of inflammation is driven by the sympathetic nervous system. That's the fight or flight part of our nervous system. What magnesium does is it calms that down so that the parasympathetic, or the rest and recovery part of the nervous system, can take over. And I think, so for at least 3 different reasons, I think you would benefit from adding magnesium. You're going to say, how much should I take? Divide your body weight by 2.2, and that gets you to kilograms, and multiply that by 10, and that would be the number of milligrams you want to take a day.
Of course, another way of evaluating that is you take it up to the point where you start to get them loose stools and bowel movements, and that's one of the things. If you stay believe that, well, you'll be fine. If you take too much of it, of course, you will get loose stools. Anything else you wanted to ask, Mark?
No, I usually follow the show with the politics, and I was listening today, and I got all the information, and I'll keep listening on shortwave to the great show. Thanks a lot, Dr.
God
Dan.
bless. Thanks so much, Mark. Okay, our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. And Mark's living not too far from Times Square there in New York City. And, of course, listening to us on shortwave. And this program's heard on a number of different networks. He certainly is heard on the Genesis Network, the American Christian Network. It's heard on the Microfet Network. It's certainly then heard on a number of other stations across America. So we're fortunate to have it heard. And, of course, people can hear it on iPad, iPhone, cell phones, on the Internet. And we're just trying to reach people on many, many subjects. But the subject of your health is so important. There's certain things that you should be taking, and certainly you can consult with. We have a list of the things that Barbara and I take. I would comment, though, as I did mention earlier, that Barbara has started taking the jigsaw magnesium as our son, and both my son and Barbara, my wife, seem to really enjoy this type of magnesium because it is a time release. You don't get it all at one time, but over a period of time. Well, our telephone number, of course, is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. You have a question or comment. Our guest is Morley Robbins, and he's known as the Magnesium Man. He certainly counsels people on health. That's what he's doing today. But he's also stressing the importance of certainly of taking an adequate supply of magnesium. Something most people don't think of, but it is a very real factor in maintaining health today. And we'll be back here in just a few minutes, right here at Radio Liberty. Again, our number 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or here on the Central Coast of California, 464-8295. Well, this is Dr. Stan. I guess Morley Robbins. We have John calling from Ohio. We'll have him on the line here in just a minute. And certainly people out all across America are listening to the program and really trying to understand what is really going on. Certainly we're having very real problems as far as nutrition, because so much of what certainly is being put out by the major mainline media, and unfortunately put out by doctors. Doctors mean very well, but they are never schooled in nutrition, going to school, and only in recent years have they begun to stress the importance of fruits and vegetables, which are vitally important for adequate health. Would you agree with that, Morley?
Absolutely. Yes, it is. And I think what it's unfortunate that it's taken this long for people to come around, particularly your colleagues in the medical field, but I think they are becoming more aware of this. I think the public is actually on the leading edge in this thought, and I think it's a great new era that we're entering as people begin to realize the importance of proper nutrition, nutrient-dense food, and begin to minimize the food toxins that are causing so much disruption in our bodies.
All right, fine. Well, let's go to John, who's calling us from Ohio. John, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I was listening, and the guy gave an interesting formula that I'd never heard before about how much magnesium you should take. And
well, I think that certainly, Morley, isn't there a simpler means of figuring out how much to take? Should you take 2 or 3 a day? It gets too complicated. People are not going to do some sort of a mathematical challenge. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm a scientist, Dr. Stan, so that doesn't bother me.
Okay, fine. Well, Morley, tell us what should people actually be taking?
I'll follow up on the comment that it's a formula that was developed by Mildred Seeley, who was the foremost authority. She passed away a few years ago, but she found that people responded best using 6 to 10 milligrams per kilogram body weight, and that is complicated for some people, but for scientists, that's sort of a walk in the park. The other thing to know is that the RDA for men is 420 milligrams. What is also clear in the literature is that in order to get any real change in metabolic function, you need to take what's called a therapeutic dose of magnesium. That is 2 times the RDA. So for starters, you need to be somewhere between 800 and whatever your formula is, whatever that range is. What I've had the best success with is getting people to start, as Dr. Stan is suggesting. Let's do a stair step. Start off with a couple with Jigsaw. That's going to be 250 milligrams, and work your way up to your optimal dose over the course of a couple weeks. And that way, you're going to begin to allow the body to adjust to this mineral that has likely been missing in your diet and in your environment, and you're going to get the best response and best reactivity to it.
And then gradually, after you started out with 2 tablets, you'd actually keep taking more until you begin getting a result on your bowel. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the ultimate test is if the bowel is soft, that's good. If it turns to diarrhea, you need to pull back on the dose.
Okay, John, does that answer your question?
Well, I had a little bit hard time hearing them. It was body weight divided by 2.2.
Correct.
And then that number was equal to kilograms of magnesium. Then there was a factor you multiplied or divided by to get it.
Hold that thought for just a moment here. Well, this is Dr. Stan. Our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. We had John calling in from Ohio, wanted to know about the how much you would actually take. Morley came up with a rather complicated formula, but finally came down that men would probably take a couple of 250 milligram tablets a day, and then gradually increase that, or capsules a day, and gradually increase it until they began having certainly a change in their bowel habit, and as they started having any loose stools, well, you'd cut back. Physiologically, the body understands how much you should have, and when you get too much, they'll respond with loose stools, and certainly when you're taking the right amount, why you have normal bowel movements. Sean, I think from my point of view, that's a very good way to go. What are your thoughts? Do you have any other questions, Sean?
Well, not really. I've heard another doctor say to take anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000.
Right, I think that they certainly can, but that's, of course, regular magnesium. This is a time-release magnesium, so it's a little bit different, but basically we're talking in the same basic field, but probably between 1,000 and 2,000, okay?
Yeah. Is magnesium an important thing to have when you're trying to have fractured bones healed?
What about that, certainly, Morley? What about fractured bones? Does magnesium play an important part with the healing of bones?
The bone matrix involves 18 different minerals and nutrients. But the important thing to understand, John, is that the osteoblasts, the cells that actually build the bone, must work in an alkaline environment. And the enzyme alkaline phosphatase is activated by magnesium. So it's a very important component to building new bone and healing bone would be to create an alkaline environment. So magnesium would be a key component.
And of course, the collagen is an important part of bone, and you need, of course, to have healthy collagen. I think you need magnesium to have a healthy collagen. Anything else, John?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, fine. And that was John calling from Ohio. Again, our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. Our guest is Morley Robbins, the Magnesium Man. Now, Morley, how can our listeners get Jigsaw Magnesium if they'd like to get it? How can they get it?
They can call 1-866-601-5800. That's 1-866-601-5800. Or for those who might have access to a computer, it's www.jigsawhealth.com.
And Jigsaw Magnesium is a time-release magnesium, and certainly most magnesium is simply a regular capsule, where of course you get it all at one time, whereas the Jigsaw, it's a time release. So basically, of course, in your practice and people you're working with, Morley, what sort of response have you gotten? Why do you think the Jigsaw Magnesium is better than just regular magnesium, or is there a great deal of difference?
So I think there's a significant difference. There are people who, the first thing they notice is they have more energy. Second thing they notice is that they sleep better. And the third thing that they notice is that they no longer have constipation, which is a great relief for a lot of people, because they think that it's something that they're doing wrong with their diet, when in fact it's just a missing mineral. We've had extraordinary results. We have a nutrition-based practice. We focus on a lot of retooling of making sure that people are eating real food and other nutrients. But our foundation is a good solid basis of minerals, but the most important is to focus on magnesium. And that is the bedrock for enabling people to get recovery, to rebalance, and to really alleviate themselves of a lot of the chronic conditions that they're wrestling with right now. So we've got a lot of good, just tremendous success stories. People who are no longer taking antidepressant medication, people who are no longer taking statins, people who are no longer taking diuretics, because they found that the magnesium was able to correct the imbalance that was forcing them to take that medication.
Well, our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295 here on the Central Coast of California. If you have a question at all, certainly our guest is Morley Robbins, and he's talking about magnesium. He's talking about one specific brand of magnesium, but certainly magnesium itself is what is so vitally important. And of course, it's important that you understand magnesium is vital for your health, and most people are not getting enough magnesium through the diet because you're not eating certainly things like kelp and other things that are high in magnesium. 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295, and certainly we have Anna from Florida. Anna, do you have a question for our guest?
I certainly do, and thank you, Dr. Montieth. And I would like to ask Mr. Robertson, first of all, isn't calcium a carrier for magnesium, and if it's necessary to take calcium with magnesium? And number two,
well, let's just get one question at a time. Basically, Morley, Anna is asking if magnesium is the carrier for calcium, and basically what the relationship is between calcium and magnesium, and which one should you take the most of, and why? Go ahead.
Right. Calcium is not the carrier for magnesium. Magnesium, in fact, regulate calcium by activating 3 different hormones that are responsible for the placement and the level of calcium in the body. So magnesium is the more important mineral, and I think the very least you should have is a 1-to-1 ratio. I would much rather see it be 2 parts magnesium to 1 part calcium. Now the key here is you've got to make sure that it's a bioavailable form of calcium. Calcium carbonate is chalk. Most supplements have calcium carbonate as the form of calcium. You're better off not taking any calcium if that's the only form that you can find. So magnesium is far more important.
But what form of calcium should they take? Calcium sulfate?
Calcium lactate is the best form. It turns into that calcium bicarbonate, which is exactly what the body's looking for in 1 step.
Okay, fine. So basically, Anna, did you have another question?
Yes, and I would like to know, is calcium a good supplement for hypertension or
is calcium a good supplement for hypertension?
No, again, I would say magnesium is your better focus. Jay Cohen wrote a wonderful book, a little paperback book on the importance of magnesium and blood pressure control. Square One Publishers put that out a number of years ago. But magnesium is the more important mineral. It's the most important mineral for controlling blood pressure.
Okay, fine. Anything else, Anna, before we let you go?
That's just fine, and I want to thank you so very much.
God bless. Thanks very much.
I'm looking to get his supplements. Okay.
Okay, let's go to Tom, who's calling us from Mendocino. Tom calling us from Mendocino. Our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. Hi, Tom. Do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I have a question for your guest, Dr. Stan.
Go right ahead.
In the beginning of this interview, he mentioned that he had frozen shoulder, and someone near and dear to me has had several bouts of frozen shoulder, and it's pretty horrific, the amount of pain they go through. And I'm wondering if that is related to magnesium deficiency.
I would love to be able to tell you that it was a direct result of magnesium. It wasn't. Truth be known, it wasn't. From what I've learned, though, is it is absolutely going to be very beneficial. I would encourage whoever it is that you're referring to apply magnesium oil to their affected shoulder. I would certainly increase the dosage of magnesium, make sure that they're getting, again, 2 times the RDA. If it's a woman, it needs to be 2 times 320 milligrams. If it's a man, 2 times 420 milligrams. And I would encourage them to go to a chiropractor who does what's called spinal network analysis. And through light touch, they can correct the nerve firing that's causing the shoulder to lock up the way it is.
And Tom, of course, I practiced orthopedics for many years, and I was always suddenly frustrated with its frozen shoulders. But there is an element that has to do with the sympathetic nervous system. And for a time, I did acupuncture. In fact, I got to be pretty good at it. In fact, I finally had to make the decision whether I was going to be an orthopedist or an acupuncturist, and I decided to stay with orthopedics because I loved it. But sometimes acupuncturists can help with a frozen shoulder, certainly the customary method of treating it. I mean, you go ahead and you exercise it for 6 months to a year, and it either gets totally stiff and then you manipulate it and break up the adhesions, or it gets better by itself. But there is a place out there for acupuncture in this specific situation if you've had it x-rayed and you know that it is primarily a frozen shoulder. Anything else you want to ask, Tom?
One more comment.
That was it. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom.
I thought your guest wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to say real quick, what I've learned is that there's always an emotional component to a frozen shoulder. You might look into emotional freedom technique, or the tapping technique is out on the web. Joseph Mercola has a wonderful video on it, and there's always an emotional dimension to that.
Okay, fine. Anything else, Tom?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, fine. Our telephone number again is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. And let's go to Darlene, who's calling us from Pennsylvania, and she too is listening on shortwave. Hi, go right ahead, Darlene.
Hi, Tom. I would just like to know two questions. First of all, how do you know you're low on magnesium? And my second question is, would it help with urge incontinence?
All right, the first question is, how do you know if you're low in magnesium? And the second question would be having to do with urinary incontinence. But let's take the first question. How do you know if you're low in magnesium? Morley?
The best signs are you have muscle twitches, you'll have muscle cramps in your feet or lower legs. You might have a muscle twitch. If you have constipation, if you get regular headaches, if you have indigestion, these are some very subtle signs that the body is not able to do its work, and these are indications of magnesium deficiency. The very presence of urinary incontinence is an indication of excess calcium in the bladder, and so there needs to be more magnesium to offset that calcium so that the bladder can relax more and that the sphincters can tighten and close properly. We've had clients that have had that issue, and when they were able to get their dosage of magnesium where it needed to be, they found that was no longer the problem.
If I could make a suggestion, Darlene, you really ought to get that book, Magnesium, by Carol Dean. We do carry it. It's a little paperback book, not that expensive, but it's very, very thorough, and I'm very impressed by it. That's why we carried it for many years. Anything else you had, other questions you had, Darlene?
What is the name again of the book?
It's called Magnesium. It's available by calling 1-800-544-8927. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
God bless. Well, let's go, of course, now to Paul, who's calling from Indiana. Hi, Paul. How are you doing? And do you have a question for us?
Yes, gentlemen. Yes, I'd like to ask how does magnesium play, what part does it play in brain physiology? Because I saw Dr. Flink's a paper in the 1956 JAMA, and he showed people taking magnesium. He showed them their signature, and as they took more magnesium and got up to par, their signatures went from just a rough caveman type signature that you could barely read to they improved greatly. It became legible. I
think that's a very good point. What part does magnesium play as far as the brain, Morley? Have you looked into that?
Well, first of all, my hat's off to you for finding the article by Edmund B. Flink. He's one of the great legendary clinicians who use magnesium. I guess the better question would be what part of the brain function does not rely on magnesium? The whole process of energy production for the brain lives on glucose. And it takes 28 molecules of magnesium to metabolize 1 molecule of glucose. So the very process of energy production for the brain is highly dependent on magnesium. The neurotransmitters can't be made without magnesium. Serotonin, melatonin, GABA, a lot of the very popular neurotransmitters right now are totally dependent on having magnesium to activate the key enzymes that allow those synthetic processes to take place. A lot of people are dealing with issues of anxiety, and the very mechanism of magnesium is to calm the body down. And the other point that I made earlier in the broadcast is it's instrumental, it's critical for the regulation and the proper firing of the nerve cell depends on magnesium. So it's on many, many different levels. It is a critical component of brain tissue function.
And I think that's really is absolutely right. I remember when I was in medical school, and of course we used to talk about all the diseases people had, and one of them was pregnant women get something called eclampsia, where of course they would go into convulsions. Terrible, terrible thing, related to swelling of the brain, and you gave them magnesium sulfate, that intravenously. The only time I ever heard anybody even talk about magnesium when I was in medical school, well, the treatment for eclampsia was magnesium sulfate, and it quieted down the brain. It got it to function more normally, and so I think that what this article that you read in the Journal of the American Medical Association in the 1960s is vitally important. People need to understand how important magnesium is for proper brain function. Anything else, Paul?
No, that's I could probably listen for a half an hour about what it does to the brain, but what it does to the brain, apparently it's very crucial for every other organ of the body. I thank you very much.
And have you ever read that book on magnesium, Carol Dean's book? We do carry it. We think it's important.
I'm not sure if I have it or not. I have one. I'm going to see if it's by Carol Dean. If not, I'll get my hands on it.
All right. I think it's well worthwhile. We're putting together a 4-tape set on this. We think it's an important subject. Thanks very much for calling. Our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. Did you have a comment there, Morley, before we go to our next guest?
Yes. Just for the last caller, just point out that a magnesium researcher by the name of Robert Fink, V as in Victor, I-N-K, down in, I believe he's in New Zealand, has just published a book on magnesium and the central nervous system. Brand new publication, just a couple months old, and I think he will find that to be a tremendous resource for his interest.
All right, well, let's go to Sherry, who's calling us from Tri-Cities up there and up in Washington. Again, our number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. Our guest is Morley Robbins, and of course, he's working with the people who produce Jigsaw Magnesium, which is a time-release magnesium. Sherry, do you have any question or comment?
I have a question for him, Dr. Stan, in regards to my husband. He has a spur on his left foot. I think it's called a calcaneal spur.
Calcaneal spur, yes, go ahead.
Okay, calcaneal spur, and also, I can't pronounce it, enthesopathy of ankle and tarsus. And I just wondered if, instead of having to have surgery to remove that spur, if the magnesium might be of help for that.
Well, if I were in his body, I would be increasing my magnesium dose. I would be soaking my feet in foot baths with 1 ounce, maybe 2 ounces of magnesium oil in a hot foot tub that would cover the foot for at least 30 minutes. And I would be applying magnesium oil directly to the affected area. Magnesium oil is it's dehydrated seawater. And it's basically magnesium chloride is all it amounts to. A very good.
Where do you get that magnesium oil? Is it anything like Epsom salts? I've heard of soaking your feet in Epsom salts, but...
I think you go to a health food store, they would have it there for you.
Right.
Okay?
Okay. So soak it for 30 minutes each night with 1 to 2 ounces of magnesium oil. I guess that's in water, warm water.
In warm water, as hot as you can take it. And then I would also apply magnesium oil directly to the affected area.
Okay, fine. Thanks very much for calling, Sherry.
So
bye-bye. Let's go to Sean, who's calling from the great state of Tennessee. Hi, Sean. Do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I do. I was wondering, do you know of any way I could try to treat being fluoridated of my water?
I'm sorry, you have fluoridated water?
Yeah.
Well, basically, because you can take
water here. I'm wondering if there's a way I could sort of reverse the effects from that.
Well, you can actually get a Berkey water filter, and it'll take the fluoride out, and that's something we carry.
Yeah.
We think it's important.
Well, I know, but unfortunately, with my budget, I can't hardly afford nothing.
Unfortunately,
it's a horrible economy.
I know it's a terrible situation, and certainly, but you're going to have to filter that water out or find some other source of it. But certainly, there's no easy way to get the fluoride out of the water, unfortunately. Any thoughts that you would have, Morley?
No, I was just going to say that Berkey is the best bet in terms of filter. The other thing I would point out for the listener is that fluoride is most troubling to a magnesium deficient person. So make sure you're upping your magnesium dose to the max.
Okay, fine. Anything else you'd like to ask before we let you go, Sean?
Well, I guess it's a shame that I can't hardly afford any of this stuff. I'm just one of those unfortunate statistics that unfortunately is going to be vulnerable to all this New World Order stuff.
I'm afraid I think a lot of people are going to be in your same situation before long, Sean. Thanks so much for calling, and let's go to Frank. Right. Frank calling from Salinas. Frank, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I have a question about, I take a lot of over-the-counter anti-acid, which is aluminum hydroxide, I think it is, and magnesium.
I'm sorry, you take a lot of what now?
Over-the-counter liquid anti-acid.
What is that?
It's aluminum something hydroxide. And
why are you taking aluminum hydroxide?
For stomach acid.
All right, what are your thoughts on that, Morley?
Well, unfortunately, it isn't excess stomach acid. What's happened is you don't have enough acid in your stomach, and what you're getting is an alkaline wash up your esophagus. Milk of magnesia was invented back in the 1870s and was used for over 100 years. I would encourage you to do a little research on the impact of the antacids. They are very disruptive to the acid production in your stomach, and they're not doing what you think they're doing.
And this is such an important point that Morley is making. Basically, of course, most of the people with heartburn is not because they actually suddenly have too much acid. They don't have enough acid. And you need to find certainly a health practitioner in your area who understands that. And I know for years, everybody was taking certainly the Pepsid or some antacid, and that's the worst thing in the world you can do. We're out of time, Frank, but if you want to call some other time, we'd be glad to talk about it. Well, Morley, we've got 3 minutes for you to wrap up the program. Go right ahead. Your point is well taken. Most people don't understand that the heartburn people are getting is not excess acid, it's not enough acid. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I think maybe my closing comment would be everyone is worried about their heart, and everyone is worried about their cholesterol level. Well, the story behind the story is that the reason why the cholesterol level is high is that the body makes stress hormones from cholesterol. Doctors never told you that your body makes 10 times more cholesterol in a day than you could possibly eat. The other part that people are not familiar with or not aware of is that magnesium, in fact, regulates the production of cholesterol. When magnesium is present, the body is not as stressed out and doesn't need as many stress hormones. Magnesium is, in fact, the regulator of thousands of different chemical reactions in the body, but one of its great gifts is that it allows people to not get stressed out and allows them to have regularity and rhythm in their life. It's amazingly simple, but it's very, very powerful, and I can't encourage people enough to get out there and begin to work with a really effective form like Jigsaw Health, and I think they will be pleasantly surprised how they feel differently and are able to react to the world in a very different way. That would be my closing comment.
All right, fine. Well, I want you to stay on just a moment or two more because, of course, we'll want to get your telephone number out where people can actually get the Jigsaw Magnesium. So they do a good job with that, and we want to let people know where they can get that. Now, basically, are you doing a lot of radio work getting the information out, Morley, about magnesium and about Jigsaw Magnesium?
Yeah, I do 2 to 3 radio shows a week. I write for several different blog sites, and I write for a couple different magazines. So I'm very actively trying to communicate this, and I'm currently working on a book that will be published at the end of the month and then released in time for National Heart Month, which is February, and it's going to be on magnesium and the importance to heart health.
And of course, this also is important as far as the function of the muscles as well as the heart, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very, very critical.
All right, fine. Well, I think that people have to understand that magnesium is an essential element of our collagen and certainly of our muscle tissue. And without certainly the mitochondria and the other intracellular parts of our cells just don't function properly. We'll be back in just a moment here. Well, Morley, before we let you go, I want you to get that telephone number out one more time, would you?
Sure. It's 1-866-601-5800. 1-866-601-5800.
God bless you. Thanks very much. We'll be talking to you real soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Stan.
Bye-bye. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and this is the time when I need to remind our listeners we do carry the book on magnesium by Carol Dean. Certainly we've carried it for, I guess maybe 6 or 8 years. But it's something that doesn't go out of style. You need to understand the importance of magnesium. There's certain things that are vitally important to your health. Vitamin D3 is so vitally important. Certainly a good all-around multivitamin is important. But there are others, certainly, of the minerals that are vitally important. And magnesium and certainly D3 are two things that I and my family take regularly.